Good evening, everybody. Good evening, morning, ma'am. Dr. Engels, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see
All
me?
right. Well, is your camera on, ma'am? I can't really see you. Okay, maybe because we are sharing the screen now.
I say yes. I say I can see me up on the top of the screen.
Okay,
You see me up there?
1 minute, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am, you're visible. We can hear. We can see you.
Okay,
Uh,
wonderful.
yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining. We'll start exactly at
That's,
4.
yes. Well, thank you for having me. See, I've got my
Uh,
tea right here, so yeah. Hopefully, I'll be able to stay awake for
oh,
next
yeah,
little
it's early morning there, right? Thank you so much for
bit.
doing for us.
Well, it's a wonderful program. Thank you for sending it to me. I wish I were in a kind of in a better state to to be able to
Uh-huh.
take in the papers and things, but a lot of really interesting topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's for the first time we are also having something connected with music in the history department. So that is also new. So altogether,
Oh,
this
great.
conference this conference is really, really special.
That's great.
Yeah.
Uh, that's now how is this something that happens every year, this conference?
It's the first time that we are doing it as a conference,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like in a humble
Okay.
beginning of it, and
That's
that's the reason why it is
okay.
completely online too. So maybe in
I
the
see.
upcoming years we can make it offline, and like you said, you may be able to come here. If possible, yeah,
Yes.
you can also come here. And have you ever been to India? I don't think
That's
so.
I have not. No, it's
Oh,
it's on my list. It's high up on my list. I would love to come
okay.
for a visit.
So now you have also a college in your list, a university on your list, which you'll have to definitely visit when you're coming to India.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So we'll wait for another 5 minutes for all the other participants to join, ma'am. Okay, you can enjoy
Okay.
your coffee in the meantime.
All right. I appreciate it.
All done, Sonal?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We are ready.
Okay.
We'll start exactly at
Um,
4.
yeah, 1 minute.
Okay.
Have all the other.
Yeah. Do we have our pro vice chancellor here, ma'am?
Yeah, I'll just call.
Okay, ma'am. Vaishnavi, are you there?
Yes, sir. One minute, sir. Good evening, one and all. I, Vaishnavi, from the Department of History at St. Joseph University, am thrilled to welcome you to the inaugural of Young Historians Conference. Today marks the beginning of an exciting journey as we explore the untold stories and narratives from history. We are honored to have you with us as we celebrate the first edition of Young Historians Conference, themed Unearthed Narratives Celebrating Unexplored History, organized by the Department of History at St. Joseph University. Thank you for joining us on this historic occasion. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed resource person of the day, Dr. Monique Ingalls, Associate Professor of Music, along with the faculty of St. Joseph University, and all the young historians present in the audience. I now invite Ms. Jane D'Souza, Head of the Department of History, to deliver the welcome address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Good evening, one and all. A warm welcome to St. Joseph's University, Bangalore for the Young Historians Conference, an online event featuring intercollegiate and inter-university paper presentations. The theme of the conference is Unearthed Narratives, Celebrating Unexplored Histories. It aims to explore the lesser known historical events and figures, bringing to light stories that have been overshadowed or forgotten. The theme emphasizes the importance of inclusivity in historical discourses and recognizes the diverse experiences and contributions that form the complex mosaic of our past. The conference provides a significant platform for emerging scholars to showcase their research expertise. It highlights a commitment to promoting intellectual growth and innovation among young historians. For all the young researchers participating from different institutions, the conference is not just a platform to present their work, but also a journey towards academic excellence. It is a testament to their dedication and passion for history. Their contributions to the field are invaluable, and we eagerly anticipate the insights and discoveries that will arise from this gathering of young minds. We are honored to have a distinguished guest among us today, Dr. Monique Ingalls, Associate Professor of Music and Director of Research and Graduate Programs for the Church Music at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, USA, who is our esteemed resource person for the day. Dr. Ingalls is a well-renowned for her expertise in ethnomusicology, religious studies, media studies, popular music studies, and history. We extend a warm welcome to you, Dr. Ingalls.
Thank you, ma'am, for your heartfelt.
We are delighted to welcome Dr. Ronald Mascarenhas, Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor of St. Joseph's University, for graciously accepting our invitation to deliver the keynote address on this momentous occasion. We are eagerly looking forward to hearing his insights and perspectives on the subject matter. We are also joined today by two moderators for the sessions, Dr. Geeta Badikalaya, Founder Trustee of Destination Heritage, and Mr. Rohit Kumar, a PhD scholar at the University of Pittsburgh, USA. We would like to warmly welcome both of you and express our gratitude for gracing this occasion with your presence. Thank you, Dr. Geeta and Mr. Rohit. On this occasion, I also welcome Mr. Clement D'Souza, the Dean of Humanities, my colleagues in the department, and our highly talented young historians who have graced us with their presence today. Your presence has indeed made this event more meaningful and memorable. A warm welcome to all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your heartfelt words that have set the stage for our event. I now invite Dr. Ronald J. Mascarenhas, Pro Vice Chancellor at SJU, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Dean of School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Mr. Clement D'Souza, HOD, Mrs. Jane D'Souza, moderators of academic sessions, Dr. Geeta, Mr. Rahul, Dr. Paul Newman, Mr. Sonal, esteemed colleagues, and my dear young students, good evening to all of you and a warm welcome. In the absence of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Reverend Father Victor Lobo, it is my profound honor to welcome our esteemed guest speaker of this evening, Dr. Monique Ingalls, Associate Professor of Music, Director of Research and Graduate Program, Baylor University, Texas, United States of America. Warm welcome to you, Professor Monique Ingalls. I congratulate the School of Humanities and especially the Department of History and the organizing committee for organizing this Young Historian Conference on the beautiful theme, Unearthed Narratives, Celebrating Unexplored Histories. Today, we stand at the crossroads of the past and the future, ready to delve into the uncharted territories of our collective story. History is a vibrant, evolving narrative shaped by humanity's varied experiences, struggles, and triumphs. Yet, history we often encounter in textbooks and media is a mere fragment of this vast mosaic. Countless voices and narratives have been marginalized, overlooked, and silenced, waiting in the shadows for their moment in the sun. Addressing marginalized or forgotten narratives and challenging conventional historical perspectives is an important aspect of historical scholarship. The voices and experiences of individuals and communities that have been historically marginalized are women, minority group, indigenous people, or other marginalized populations. This conference is a beacon of light, illuminating those forgotten chapters of our past. This conference, I'm sure, is to unearth and celebrate these hidden narratives, recognizing their crucial role in shaping our understanding of the world. It is an endeavor not just of academic quest, but of moral imperative to acknowledge and honor the diversity of human experiences. In a world where history is often point of contention, especially nowadays, it should be our aim to transform it into a bridge of understanding and cooperation. We recognize the challenges this poses, but we also understand its necessity for fostering reconciliation and unity. I want to emphasize the importance and need of critically evaluating existing historical narratives and questioning dominant or biased interpretations of history. As we celebrate these diverse narratives, we are enriching our understanding of history and actively contributing to a more just and equitable future. We are redefining what it means to learn from our past, to ensure that no story remains untold and no voice unheard. Therefore, I invite each one of you, the bright minds of our student community, to join this noble quest. I hope you will discuss how a more inclusive and accurate understanding of history can contribute to a social justice and equity by acknowledging past injustices, acknowledging the resilience of marginalized communities, and informing efforts to rectify historical wrongs. I hope this conference will inspire a more comprehensive, inclusive, and accurate understanding of history. Therefore, my best wishes to all the participants who are going to present their papers in this conference and have a great and enlightening academic experience. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The eloquence of your words has left an indelible mark, setting the stage for a truly thought provoking and an inspiring event. Your contribution is greatly appreciated, sir. I now invite Mr. Sonal V. Manoj, Faculty of the Department of History, to deliver the felicitation address. Over to you, sir.
Hi, everybody. Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Ronald, the guests of for the day, Dr. Inkles, Dean of the School of Humanities, Professor Clement, Head of the Department, Ms. Jane, respected chairs and fellow history enthusiasts. So I'm not really going to speak about the purpose of the conference and the theme of the conference, the significance of the conference is all highlighted by our Pro Vice Chancellor very clearly. So this conference clearly aims at that celebration of past, highlighting those things which were untold before and giving the right recognition and acknowledging the wonderful past that we have. And a Young Historians Conference, it is a dream come true, a platform to nurture young minds into the path of history and to the research culture. And as an initiative in inception, this has got a long way to go, and it is with a profound sense of honor that I extend my warmest felicitations to Dr. Monique Ingalls, a luminary in the field of ethnomusicology. And this occasion, the Young Historians Conference, it serves as a wonderful moment to celebrate it's a moment also to celebrate the remarkable contributions that Dr. Ingalls has made to the realm of musicology. And I definitely acknowledge her as a beacon of inspiration for emerging scholars gathered here. Because personally, for past 2 years, she had been an inspiring figure to me, undoubtedly, and I really, really, really look forward to learning under her for a journey with her. And when looking at her journey in the world of ethnomusicology, it is nothing short of extraordinary, I would say. Her impactful writings has not only deepened our understanding of the cultural significance of music, but has also opened new avenues of exploration for scholars across disciplines. So through her meritorious studies, she has actually woven a tapestry that connects threads of music, culture, and history, fostering a nuanced appreciation of the diverse musical traditions that shape our global heritage. Therefore, as we congratulate our young historians who are going to present paper today, I also congratulate and wish Dr. Monique Ingalls, all the very best in her future endeavors. And I'd also appreciate the concern and the interest that our university, vice chancellor, pro vice chancellors, and dean is showing in the interest that they're trying to create among the youth. And once again, in this occasion, we also applaud the vibrant community of young historians present here. May this conference be a platform for intellectual exchange, fostering collaboration and innovation among young minds. So looking forward to a wonderful and fruitful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now, without further delay, let us move on to the most awaited part of the event, the inaugural address by Dr. Monique Ingalls, titled, I Love to Tell the Story, Music Making as Rich Source of Unexplored History. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Monique Ingalls. Let us give her a loud round of applause. Over to you, Dr. Ingalls.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this kind invitation and for these incredibly encouraging words. I am inspired by the organizers, by university's dedication to facilitating this conversation, and I think it's going to be a very exciting day. I have looked at the wonderful assortment of papers on a rich variety of topics, and think that this is really a historical day, a historical event, and I'm so glad to be joining you for it. Again, thank you to the organizers for their very kind invitation, especially to Mr. Sonal Manoj. As he mentioned, we have been corresponding for the last couple of years, and he too is doing some fascinating music-related historical work. So I want to acknowledge and thank him especially as well. So I'm going to share my screen, just making sure that everyone can hear me. I know I was muted a moment ago, but share my screen with you. I will have some slides to accompany and to illustrate the points that I will make today. So let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll continue. Okay. So there we go. So before launching into the meat of my talk, let me tell you a bit about my background as a music scholar and how it interfaces with historical methods and sources. So I have conducted research on 3 continents, so North America, Europe, and Africa, among people of diverse backgrounds, primarily Christian communities, but also those of other and no religious affiliation as well. The primary toolkit I use is ethnography, a method from anthropology for studying social groups in the present day. But you as historians will likely agree that it is very hard, even impossible, to understand a phenomenon in the present day if you don't know a good deal about its history. So what do you do if that history hasn't been told, or if it has, if it's been told incompletely or even erroneously? This is why historical research has become a crucial part of my own work, because the good narratives simply aren't there. I rely heavily upon oral history interviews in my work, as well as delving into archival materials. So the 3 main sources of history that I have helped to write or am helping others to write include the history of contemporary worship music in American Protestant churches and the Christian music industry, the history of gospel choirs in Britain in collaboration with several Black British scholars, and then the history of church music in Nigeria from the late 19th century to the present. And here I'll talk a bit about this project later. It's been really a gift and a wonderful opportunity to help Nigerian doctoral students create their own music history, researching and interpreting the music that is most important and valued to them. So the subtalk, or the subtitle of my talk today, Music as a Rich Source for Unexplored Histories, encapsulates what is, in some ways, a fairly straightforward argument that I'll make apparent to you right now, is that simply historians should pay attention to music. And I'll spend the rest of my talk today explaining why music is vital to historical study and how you can incorporate it into your own work. So unfortunately, the study of music, in my experience in universities in North America and in Europe, is still not taken seriously or at the margins of many mainstream disciplines, including history and anthropology. Music is sometimes seen or treated as something frivolous or fluffy or decorative. Serious scholars, or those who esteem themselves as such, prefer more meaty subjects: politics, economics, technology, social movements, etc. But I want to argue today that music is just as serious a subject for historians as any of the other things I just mentioned, and that as a product of human social relations, it is inextricably intertwined with all of those so-called very, and rightly so, serious areas: politics, economics, etc., reflecting and sometimes even transforming them. Focusing on music, especially when written records are lacking, can help us construct the histories of groups of people who are marginalized or ignored by the mainstream society. So before delving into the how and the why of musical study, let's first answer the what by considering some definitions. So music is a notoriously difficult thing to define, if it's even a thing at all. But I'll tell you about a very important shift in thinking about music that's happened among scholars of the past few decades. So scholars have gone from thinking about music as a thing or an object to an activity or a social practice. So in other words, from music as a noun to musicking as a verb, from music as an object to musicking as a collective action. So here is a famous formulation from musicologist Christopher Small. He says, "The essence of music lies not in musical works, but in taking part in performance, in social action. Music is thus not so much a noun as a verb, to music. To music is to take part in any capacity in a musical performance, and the meaning of musicking lies in the relationships that are established between the participants by the performance." End quote. So yes, of course, there are objects involved in music making. Instruments, musical scores, recordings are all tangible objects and commodities that can be bought and sold. And of course, as we know in our information age, it doesn't have to be tangible to be bought and sold. But Small would say that these things enable but do not define music. They are artifacts of social relations, and that all music flows along pathways established by these social relations. So we've seen what music is. Now let's talk about what music does. Musicking, whether this is performing music, listening to music, or simply being in proximity to somewhere that music is being played, has power. Just about all philosophical and religious traditions intuitively know this. But for the skeptics out there, let's listen first to an ancient philosopher and then to a present-day music sociologist. So the Greek philosopher Plato had a good deal to say about the power, particularly even the disruptive, even anarchic power of music. In this quote from Book 4 of the Republic, Plato says that when the modes of music change, the fundamental laws of the state always change with them. He goes on to talk about the danger of new music to social stability. And there's a long tradition within philosophies, Eastern and Western, of discussing the power of music. We're going to skip 2,000 or so years into the future to Tia Denora, who is a music sociologist. And she writes here that music is not merely a meaningful or communicative medium. It does much more than convey signification through nonverbal means. At the level of daily life, music has power. It is implicated in every dimension of social agency. After she cites numerous examples and studies of the ways that music exerts power, she then summarizes. Music may influence how people compose their bodies, how they conduct themselves, how they experience the passage of time, how they feel in terms of energy and emotion about themselves, about others, and about situations. So you may be tracking with me so far. You may agree, excuse me, that music has meaning and that music is a powerful social force. But two questions that music scholars respond to a lot from scholars whose work is in other fields is, first, am I qualified? Am I allowed to talk about music if I am not a musician or if I am not musical, by which people usually mean having formal musical training? And then if so, how? How do I incorporate music into my historical studies? So to the first, we would say emphatically, yes, you are qualified. People who say that they're not musical, I found after teaching many undergraduates who claim this, oh, I'm not a musician, I'm not musical, are usually much more musical than they think. So John Blacking, a famous ethnomusicologist, has a book that asks, as you can see on the cover here, how musical is man or is humanity? And his conclusion is very. Musicking, he argues, is as natural as speech to human beings. And even if you can't sing in tune, I'll bet you can keep a beat, or identify which instrument makes what sound, or conduct an insightful analysis of song lyrics. That's all relevant musical knowledge. To the second question, how can historians incorporate music into their studies? I'll give you a few ideas. First of all, musicking and the musical objects that are used to create it and created in its wake make wonderful primary source material. Whether you're looking at song lyrics, dance steps, or historical records of describing performances or YouTube music videos. These are all texts that can be interpreted. They can yield valuable historical insights that can either corroborate or challenge what the information that you glean from written texts or oral history. So when you use musical primary sources, musicking becomes a lens or a window into particular events or into long-standing social and historical processes. So I want to briefly discuss with you today four of many of these historical and social processes that music can shed light on, with some examples from my own and from others' research. So first of all, the first lens that we'll talk about is music and identity formation. So music is often a central component within the formation of group identity. Thus, it can be a powerful lens in understanding how social groups are defined by race, ethnicity, class, caste, religion, and other affiliations. Music is something that people use to build, to maintain, or to challenge the boundaries between themselves and other individuals or social groups. So let me give you an example. In our forthcoming book, Black British Gospel Music, From the Windrush Generation to Black Lives Matter, several Black British colleagues and I are examining the heretofore almost relatively unexplored area of British gospel music to see how it reflects changes in Black British Christian identity from the 1950s to the present day. Gospel music started in Black British churches as an import from Caribbean immigrants who were traveling to Britain in the beginning in the 1950s en masse and into the 60s and 70s. Then, as the children of these immigrants came of age in the 1960s and in the 70s and 80s, gospel took on an American style because we Americans are cool, apparently. So finally, as many Black British individuals became increasingly distant, even alienated from their churches, in the early years of the 21st century, gospel choirs began to take root in non-religious spaces as part of secular community choirs and revitalization movement. So this brief example shows how music, studying music can reflect changing identities or identities that change in light of historical and social circumstances on local, regional, national, and even global scales. Secondly, another lens that music is particularly useful for looking through is music and its relation to political movements. So music is often associated with political movements, whether these are nationalist movements, resistance movements, or protest movements. A well-known, at least in, I'll say in my North American context, 20th century examples include the songs sung during the Civil Rights Movement as America's Black citizens fought for equality. And for a parallel South African example, I would highly commend to you this documentary. I think that it is available, probably illegally, on YouTube, but is something that I use in my classes quite a bit. Is the film Amandla, A Revolution in Four-Part Harmony, about the music protesting apartheid in 1960s to 1990s South Africa. This film shows that music was more than simply a soundtrack accompanying their resistance movement. Rather, musical activities often provided the very foundation for and the energy to promote this resistance. Finally, here's an example that might be closer to home for some of you. My colleague, Dr. Zoe Sharinian, has spent many years traveling to Tamil Nadu and looking at Dalit resistance through the lens of of musical genres, folk music, and most recently through the performance, the revitalization of performances of the Parai frame drum. She shows the transformation of this drum from a source of shame to a means of protest and empowerment. The third lens I'd like to talk about is music and colonialism, or music and post-colonialism, music and neo-colonialism, which is an area in my own field that has expanded rapidly over the past 2 decades. So music is uniquely positioned to help us understand the effects and after effects of colonialism. We know that European colonizers and American missionaries brought their music and told the people whose land they took over and whose resources they pillaged that it was the only civilized form of music. But we also know that people in colonized contexts often took that music that had been imposed upon them and reshaped it into something different. One of the wonderful things that I get to do in my position at Baylor is to work with doctoral researchers at a Christian seminary in Nigeria. We have developed a partnership where our colleagues, where we encourage them and provide the resources, intellectual as well as practical, for our colleagues to study their own song traditions and to publish their findings online for the world to see. A little later, I will put the link to the site in the chat and hope that you might go to explore it in your spare time. So many of the songs described in this site are products of the 19th century American missionary enterprise. This class and this project gives students the opportunity to reflect on and to write about the continued effects of these colonial encounters that aren't just an abstract reality or that something that happened in the distant past, but rather these after effects can be heard every Sunday morning in the songs that they sing and the style of music that is played in Nigerian Christian churches. A final lens that I'd like to talk about today is music and its relationship to globalization and transnational connections. Music is a lens into these processes, into the transnational connections that have been forged between different communities not just recently, but for centuries. Related to this last point, I want to tell you the story of the song name in the title of my talk. I love to tell the story. So this wouldn't be a properly musical presentation without at least a little bit of music. So I am going to sing for you the final verse, which is, I'll say, personally my favorite verse of this song for you. The song goes like this. I love to tell the story, 'tis pleasant to repeat what seems each time I tell it more wonderfully sweet. And when in scenes of glory I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story that I have loved so long. So this is a 19th century Protestant hymn with a text written by British abolitionist and social justice worker Kate Hankey. The melody is written by American tune writer and choir leader William Fisher. When the words here talk about the story, it's referring to the Christian story of God's love expressed in Jesus Christ. When it mentions scenes of glory, it's talking about heaven, the place many Christians believe they will go when they die, after this life is over. I learned this hymn as a child, growing up in the 1980s in my home church, which was a Baptist church in the American South. It was one of my grandmother's favorites. I hadn't thought of this song in years, decades even, until last year on a trip to Nigeria. One of our doctoral students, Adekunle Oyeni, started singing it in Yoruba, and my faculty colleague, Dr. Maria Monteiro from Brazil, sang it in Portuguese, and I sang it in English. So the act of our singing together, I think, speaks volumes on the history of the globalization of religion, what Thomas Sordus has called transnational transcendence in his book by the same name. The song is wrapped up in the intertwined histories of missionization, migration, mobility, and mediation. And though the words have been translated, my colleagues and I noted many ways that the lyrical meaning of the song has shifted in the act of translation. There are many more social and historical processes that music can be used to shed light on, but I'll leave these to you to discover. I want to reiterate a final time the main point of this talk, simply that historians should pay attention to music. What I hope that you take away is this: music is a rich source of historical information, and it can open up new avenues for historical research that enhance our understanding of unexplored pasts. Thank you very much.
Dear Dr. Ingalls, we're immensely grateful for your insightful inaugural address. Your message has enlightened us and inspired us to explore the unexplored narratives of history through the lens of music. Now the floor is open for questions. I request the audience to raise their hands to pose your questions to Dr. Monique Ingalls. First question, please.
Yeah, Carol.
Yes, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, ma'am. I truly loved your talk. It was very enlightening. But I did have a question. You mentioned how music oftentimes cuts across borders, and you spoke about the song that you sang, and they also sang it in Nigeria. However, we oftentimes come across the concept of things like jazz music and blues, which originates in one particular culture. But once it is assimilated into the broader spectrum, you sort of lose the history and the culture that is associated with that. So where does one draw the line between cultural appropriation, forgive the usage of the term, but for lack of a better term, cultural appropriation and true recognition of the culture and history of that particular kind of music?
That's a wonderful question. And something also, your question is something that many music scholars have been asking, particularly when it comes to the musical traditions of groups that are marginalized within society. So you mention, jazz and blues music, for instance. There's a large literature on how these musics, certainly the blues, formed the basis for rock and roll, and really for all of the popular music styles that have developed since the 1950s, and how oftentimes the innovators of these styles have not been given credit. I can think of an example of someone who is only now getting the credit in the well into the 21st century, getting the credit that she deserves, being a woman, and a minority, a Black woman, so kind of doubly minoritized or doubly marginalized. Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Sister Rosetta is a fascinating example, and was one of the earliest guitarists, basically early blues to rock and roll guitarists, who is now credited with inventing many of the stylistic innovations that have been handed to generally white male guitarists. Musicologists have, by unearthing videos, documentary, some fragmentary information and sources, through assembling these, they've been able to show that some of the things that Sister Rosetta Tharpe was doing were 10, 15 years earlier than some of the white rock musicians who are often credited with innovation in rock and roll guitar. So the question is a difficult one. There are many pathways along which cultural aspects or cultural products, including music, move. And I think keeping the question of power front and center, I think, will help us answer that question of appropriation. Is this appropriation? Is this borrowing? Or in the case of what I was talking about, is this imposition? Is this some for instance, the troubled colonial history of the fact that Nigerian and Brazilian colleagues know this song is because American missionaries came in and told them that their music was not acceptable to God, so here's what you need to sing instead. So thank you for your question.
Yeah, Risha?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so wonderful presentation, first of all. And I saw there was a quote from Plato, something like music influences the society or shapes how society is. I don't remember the exact quote, but I have a question that music did influence society in the past, or protest or wars, but does it apply to modern generation, the modern contemporary issues like the international issues or wars? Does it apply? Music applies in those issues.
Yeah. So is that, I cut out a little bit at the end. Does music apply to contemporary social issues? Is that the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
That's yes. I absolutely believe that it does. And in fact, I think as I may have mentioned to you, I am primarily, my own background is that of an ethnographer. So someone who is studying using anthropological methods to study what's happening in the present day. And that oftentimes my historical study is trying to shed light on, what's the history of this practice that's being studied in the present day. But yes, I think I mentioned earlier a book that I'm working on with some colleagues in Britain, some Black British Christian colleagues on gospel music, and it's been fascinating to see some of the responses within music, not just gospel music, but other musical styles, to the Black Lives Matter movement, the way that music has been employed as a way to bring people together around that cause, to bring awareness to that cause. I think gospel music in particular, the way that I have seen it used in the past 3 or so years since the early pandemic, when we're all we're all stuck at home. Music videos on YouTube in particular, there was a plethora of new songs being written in response to what was going on in Black Lives Matter, and those songs help to inform and help to bring awareness to and to bring to expression some of the issues. And I think they were able to, because music, yes, it's a communicative medium, but it's also a social force. I think that it was able to get through in a way to people who had never before considered the experience of marginalized people within their society. So that's just one example that comes immediately to mind of the many ways that music touches on contemporary social issues.
Yeah, that is a wonderful answer, ma'am. So we'll go for one last question quickly. Tanushree, since she raised her hand, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So good evening, ma'am. Wonderful presentation. And my question was, I'll just elaborate it a bit. So as Indians, we have music everywhere. The day we start, we go to pray. We have it like at the end of the day as well. So I am a taught Carnatic classical singer. So I have been teach what my teacher or what my professor taught me, which are written. And if I choose to be a teacher, a classical Carnatic music teacher, I will do the same. I will teach my students what I have been taught, and this will go on till the end. And my question, what always disturbed me while I was learning, was what about the things which are not seen or which are not heard? We are just taught what are written, and what was not written, what about those things? And as you presented your um, you as you presented this question was there from a long time, so I wanted to ask you for you.
Thank you. And what a wonderful what a wonderful question. And I appreciate that from a very different, musical background and context, the question that you are asking about what is being left out, or what are the gaps, what musical traditions or what musical styles are being left out of our training. That's something that many North American and European institutions are struggling mightily with today. So many institutions, my own included, have been so narrowly focused on Western classical music, and music that must be, read via notation, despite the fact that many of the world's traditions are oral and can't be learned through musical notation. We're now struggling with that question of how do we, on the one hand, honor and preserve the tradition that has been handed down for many decades, or in some cases for many hundreds of years, excuse me, while also first of all, leaving room for innovation, realizing that traditions, whether they change slowly or whether they change quickly, even in in the process of handing something down to someone else, there are going to be minute changes in that over time. So how open are we to including elements from, say, other cultures or other geographical areas? And I know that my field, ethnomusicology, initially developed in the mid 20th century as a response to this issue, that before many North American and European scholars had said, well, Western classical music, that is the highest and best and, most valuable music. So that's the only thing worth study. Ethnomusicology came along and said, no, the world has an infinite array, a bewilderingly diverse variety of different styles and musics, and they are valuable on their own terms. And so we need to go to the communities that practice these musics and find out what those terms are. We can't evaluate them by means of the lenses that we get from our own tradition or from our own culture. We need to find what the creators and the people who pass this music on, what it is that they value. So thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vaishnavi, ma'am,
Yes.
I'll be texting you personally about the lecture.
Sonal,
Yeah.
Sonal, excuse me. I think Mahesh, Mr. Mahesh has a question. A last one.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, Mahesh.
Yeah. Ma'am, I'm really impressed with this talk on music. But as a student of history, what I understand, establishing historicity with any event, with anything, that is very important. Now, the music is associated with the national movement, and wherever there is a joy, music is also there is a music to express joy. There is a music to express your a feeling of sadness. So how do we, as a writer of history, as a student of history, how do you appropriate music as a source to write the history? So that's my question.
Can you say the last part again? I didn't quite. How can you
see appropriating music as a source to write history? Or how do we decode the music that is associated with the national movement or that is associated with anything? How do we decode it and how do we appropriate it, as a source to reconstruct the past? So that is, a quite challenging what I feel.
Thank you. Yes, and it can be quite a challenge, and depending on what era you're studying. I think, for instance, of the difference in studying music, say in the present day, with some of my colleagues who study music in the medieval period, where they study music where there is literally no way to even know how it sounded, because there's obviously no recordings, but also no no notation. But I would say, so some ways to incorporate music, and for those that that haven't considered it before, the lyrics are generally the best place to start. If it's if it's something with lyrics, obviously instrumental music is a different story. But many historians have drawn from from protest songs, from songs that have been sung at certain events, kind of analyzing the ways that the meaning of these songs either reinforced or sometimes cut against some of the other things that were being said. Or perhaps another way to another entry point into examining music is to think about the associations, or the history of the songs themselves. So, for instance, in the American Civil Rights Movement, so many of these songs were coming straight from the Black church, and there was a reason for that. That was strategic. The Black church in the United States as the foremost institution that brought together, that gave Black Americans that gave Black Americans social cohesion and a sense of, of value. And so thinking about what songs are, so for instance, in a protest movement, a lot of times no one goes out and writes new songs. Maybe eventually they do for the movement, but what songs are being gathered, and how were those songs created, and what associated meanings are those songs bringing with them? So those are a couple of ways in. I think also there are a number of sources, and I'm happy to provide to anyone who's interested, kind of beginning to talk about the musical materials themselves. So to talk about the sounds and the meanings that those connote, that's a much trickier thing to do because, as we know, music communicates. But what it communicates and how it communicates is quite different from language. And so musicologists over time have developed a specialized vocabulary that is not beyond, is not something that you need musical training to use, is not something that you need to be able to read notation, but rather is just simply a different technical vocabulary that you can use. And so I would especially recommend, for those who are interested in developing some of those or that vocabulary, or an introduction to that, there's a wonderful book by Thomas Torino. Let me find the chat so that I can write this. Okay, so Thomas Torino, and the title of the book is Music as Social Life, and the subtitle is The Politics of Participation. And he makes some very sophisticated arguments, but also develops a terminology that people from any field can use. You don't need to be a musical specialist. You don't need to, to be able to read musical notation or have any kind of formal training to pick up on the dynamics that Torino is talking about here. So increasingly, I think folks in my field are trying to be less esoteric about the kinds of things that are described, and say, hey, there's language that anyone, regardless of their background and ability, can use in their scholarship to describe what's happening in the sound. Thank you for your question.
Thank you to each one of you for creating such a contemplative questions and making this Q&A session an interactive one. We have officially concluded our inaugural invite of Young Historians Conference. I now request Shauranya from the Department of History to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Department of History, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone present here today. Firstly, I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor, Reverend Dr. Victor Lobo, for being our pillar of support, Dr. Ronald Mascarenhas, Pro-Vice Chancellor, for his gracious keynote address. I would especially like to express gratitude to Dr. Monique Ingalls for giving us your valuable time to be with us here today and presenting such an enriching inaugural address. Your treatise, I Love to Tell the Story, Music Making as Rich Source for Unexplored Histories, enlightened and opened all our minds up to new ways of thinking about music and history. We thank you for your invaluable contribution in this arena and wish you the best for your future endeavors. I'd also like to thank our esteemed chairs, Dr. Geeta Badakilea and Mr. Rahul Kumar, for being an integral part of this conference. And I'd like to thank Ms. Jane D'Souza and Mr. Sonal V. Manoj for your words, and without whose constant guide and support, this conference would not have been possible. Thank you to the presenters for all their efforts, intellectual spirit, and passion. I wish you the best for your presentations. Your dedication and contributions will certainly add depth to our understanding of history. Last, but certainly not the least, I would like to thank the audience for your encouraging presence. May our shared commitment to uncovering hidden histories guide us through a rewarding and illuminating event. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauranya. Now I request everybody to please switch on your camera for a quick photograph.
Is it done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Inkles. It was wonderful. I'll be mailing you personally about it. So now we are going to have the conference in 2 rooms. So people who are part of session 1 can join the breakout room. You can see the breakout room option there. You can join session 1. People who are part of session 2 can click on session 2 and join the session 2. So you can all quickly move to your rooms. All right, Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi, are you here? Sanjana. Okay, Sanjana. Yeah.
Can
Just
we
check
just
whether our chair is here. You can start the session. Geeta ma'am, are you here? Sanjana, once Geeta ma'am and Jane ma'am is there, you can start.
Yes, sir. I don't think Geeta ma'am is here, so
Yeah. Yeah, I can see you. Yeah, I can see you. Yeah. You can come on screen.
Can we start, ma'am?
Yeah, you can start, Sanjana.
Yes. Good evening to everyone present here. Firstly, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to everyone present here today with us. A warm welcome to the Young Historians Conference on the theme Unearthed Narratives Celebrating Unexplored Histories. I'd like to welcome Dr. Geeta Badikilya, who will be our moderator for this session. Dr. Geeta is an independent researcher, heritage activist, folklorist, and a freelance writer. She is the founder of Destination Heritage, an organization focusing on creating an informed awareness of India's rich cultural diversity. The organization achieves this through structured talks across heritage subjects, heritage walks, workshops, seminars, webinars, and curated cultural programs. Ma'am is passionate about creating awareness of India's heritage with a special emphasis on the youth. She has been associated with St. Joseph's University for 4 years, where she has introduced us to unique concepts to benefit the students. Once again, a warm welcome, Dr. Geeta.
Thank
Now,
you so much.
now I request Dr. Geeta to give the introductory remark before we begin.
Um, Unearthed narratives, unexplored histories. The very term is very intriguing, and we want to know more about it. So, what exactly it means to many people, because it is left to your imagination, because there are no hard and fast rule that it is bound in a particular parameter. So, the very term leaves scope for your imagination to go into so many things, which I think you may not even get information from primary sources. Maybe you have to do research, go in, and then come to your own conclusions. India is full of heritage, rich in culture, but there are many sites and areas which remain unexplored. For example, I can immediately think of the Bellam caves, then Undavalli caves. So these are not usually visited by tourists. It is only people who have done a little bit of study, who are into history, may find it very interesting, because it goes back to 3rd BC. So there is no better introduction to history than visiting little known secrets and understanding some unique places which we otherwise would not go. Because many of you, I think the youngsters, you just go, you Google, and what is given there only you go. Then how do you see the lesser known places? How would you get to know their secrets? It's only when you make a list from your primary sources, go to those places, and it is a mind-boggling experience when you go there and understand how certain things have come about, which is usually not seen in tourist books, guides, or any such known sources. So beyond the well-trodden path lie many a treasure trove which is waiting to be discovered. If only we are open, if only if we are willing to take that extra trouble to go and visit these places. The unexplored offers a glimpse into the untamed beauty, cultural richness, and offbeat experiences which are often overlooked. So, with these few words, I'm looking forward to what these students are going to give us, and what we can hear from them of their experiences, whether they went to these places or how did they get to know about these places. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think your words set the perfect tone for the event. We are really honored to have you today here with us.
Thank you.
Let us now dive into the heart of the matter, the paper presentation titled Young Historians Conference on the theme Unearthed Narratives, Celebrating Unexplored Histories. In this academic session one, it will be moderated by Dr. Geeta. And the first sub-theme that we begin with is Tasting the Ancient Indian Legacy. I'd like to call upon Maria Ann Philip from Azim Premji University, who will be presenting a paper titled Medical Mesalliances of the Indus Valley, which can be inferred what can be inferred about the Harappan society through their health conditions. Over to you, Maria.
Good evening, everyone. Very happy to be here, both panelists and my peers. I'll just...
Excuse me, Maria, please, can you come on video, please?
Yes, ma'am. Can you give me a second to turn on my,
sure.
as in like to present my screen?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, give me just like 1 minute. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Philip, and I am a history major in Azim Premji University. And this is a medical miscellaneous of the Indus Valley Civilization. In this particular paper, I have looked into what can be inferred about the Indus society through the skeletal remains. So as most of you as students of history will be aware that there is very little left of civilizations that existed many, many years ago. We have very little left of the Indus Valley civilization, mainly only architectural structures and skeletal remains. In this project, through looking at skeletal remains, there are certain aspects of society that we can reconstruct. In a gist, what I will be talking about is looking at gender through teeth, essentially. The dental remains of the people of the Harappan civilization is indicative of their gender, which I will elaborate on. The different types of burials are indicative of social hierarchy. Joint degradation, things like arthritis, etc., you can tell a lot about their occupation. Through skeletal trauma, you can talk about interpersonal relations, more specifically violence. You can also infer certain things about their diet through anemia. And based on the skeletal remains, I will also be talking a little bit about the decline of the Harappan civilization. So this is a burial in one of the cemeteries, Cemetery R37, which I will be talking about later. Almost all the burials have been found in this extended supine position. And this particular burial is a primary burial, which essentially indicates that this particular skeletal remain has been found almost intact, almost head to toe. As you can see, the toes aren't quite there, but almost head to toe. Where we can find only fragments of skeletal remains, the archaeologists have termed those as secondary skeletal remains. With any archaeological endeavor, there are certain limitations. For example, first thing we have to consider is that most of the material has been eroded due to the passage of time, due to various, rain, wind, etc., etc. So we don't actually have a lot of material to work with. Secondly, this is a largely unexcavated civilization. There are about 1,400 sites that have been found in the Harappan civilization, but only 96 have been excavated. Thirdly, a thing that we have to remember is that archaeological methods, for example, radiocarbon dating, is a very destructive process. So if you're going to pass something under radiocarbon dating, there's no way you can restore it. There's no way you can get it back. So when we're dealing with remains of any sort, we'll be very careful with radiocarbon dating. Fourthly is position of artifacts. When I mean position of artifacts, I want to take to example the priest king, which is a very widely known artifact of the Harappan civilization. It has been circulated in many educational institutions as the priest king, but we don't really know whether he was a priest or a king. We just kind of assumed. The difference, whether he could be a priest king or a layman, would really depend on where he was found, whether he was placed in like a high place, would tell a lot differently about who this man was, whether he was a priest or a king, as opposed to if he was found in a dustbin somewhere. And lastly, and probably the most glaring problem that we have when we're looking at the Harappan civilization specifically, is the lack of a deciphered script. We don't have a deciphered script in the Harappan civilization, so a lot of this is purely archaeological. Right. The first thing I want to talk about is social hierarchy through burials. Now, in this paper, I have dealt mainly with 3 burial sites: Cemetery R37, which is in the city; Cemetery H, which is an extension of Cemetery R37, and it's believed to be of the later, like the mature Harappan phase; and Area G. Now, Cemetery R37, as I said, is in the city, and in this particular cemetery, the burials were found with pottery vessels, shell bangles, beads of steatite, golds, and semi-precious stones. So as opposed to the Egyptian civilization, where the elites were buried in pyramids, in this particular cemetery, there is no such a stark distinction of social hierarchy, but nevertheless, there still is. Area G, in most South Asian cultures, there is normally has been a wall and a citadel. Area G was found outside the citadel, which and Area G, as I will speak about later, the skeletal remains were plagued with more arthritis and things and like bone problems that could be associated with labor, like manual labor. So Area G can be indicative of a class that was not the elites, and they were buried outside the city. So there's a little bit about social hierarchy. As you can see in this thing in the picture, the cemetery R37 is over there. Right, so we can talk a little bit about gender differences through paleopathology. So dental caries or cavities have been found more prevalent in females than they have in males. Most historians have notably attributed this to the working, the division of labor as well. So males were supposed to, are believed to have been hunter-gatherers, whereas females are supposed to have been involved in agriculture. So female foragers eat more frequently and throughout the day and have regular access to more foodstuffs, whereas males eat less frequently and have regular access to more meat. So that has been played out in their teeth. And through that, you can tell the occupational differences or the division of labor in males and females. Thirdly, I want to talk about occupation through joint degradation. As I mentioned before, arthritis can be developed from carrying loads habitually. So the prevalence of arthritis is not abundant, but once again was found in Area G, which was outside the wall, which is once again indicative of some kind of social class. Now, settled agriculturalists experience considerable functional stress with consequent effects on joint integrity. Another skeletal sample that has been found talks about there is a lesion which has been prized out in teeth, which means, so this is an exposed skull chamber, and it was most likely something that was very painful, that today can be considered as very painful. And it has been prized out through what is...
You'll have to close now. Your time is over.
Yes, ma'am. Can you give me I'll just wrap up.
Please wrap it up.
Yeah. So, you can prize it out through a bone chamber, which is indicative of health work. So yeah, there were also evidences of trauma, which means that there was violence. and anemia, which also has to do with variegated diet structures. I do want to talk very briefly, I will talk about the decline. For a very long time, what was believed in academic circles was the Aryan invasion theory, that the Harappan civilization was wiped out because the Aryans arrived from somewhere else. This was because the horse and the chariot, both that were found in the Harappan civilization, was not native to the Harappan civilization. However, there was no widespread trauma consistent with a massacre, and all trauma that is found has been attributed to different time periods. So therefore, this theory has also been debunked. Yeah, so that's pretty much what I want to say. That's what my paper talks about as well. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Maria. Well researched.
Yeah. There are no questions.
Yeah.
I would like to ask one question. This pertains to which part of Indus Valley civilization?
So, are you talking in terms of time periods or in terms of like geography?
No, the place where it was found. The skeleton was found in which place? Which part of Indus Valley?
Right. So, there are 3 burial sites. 2 burial sites, Cemetery R37 and Cemetery H, both were found inside the city, and Area G was outside the city. So this is Harappa. Cemetery R37 is Harappa, if that's a city, if that's the question you're asking. And not Mohenjo-daro or Lothal or anything.
Now, how did you do your research to come to these conclusions?
So there are a lot of papers that have, not a lot of papers, but a small variety of papers that have been written about health conditions, and but they don't really come to these conclusions as such. They talk a lot in detail about the skeletal remains as such, and it's a very like a medical approach to it. So this lesion will be because of this, etc., etc. There are about, I refer to, I think, about 6 or 7 papers on solely the skeletal samples. And maybe you can think of it as a record, like when you're an archaeologist and you go out into the field and you find a bunch of skeletons, you record what you find on the skeletal remains, and through this you can come to certain conclusions.
Did you do you also think that forensic is applied to know something about, because forensics is used to know about skeletal remains. So was that also used? Did you take any reports from that other than archaeological and other reports that you have looked into?
No, my research was not forensic.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Next up, we have Dyuvan Dinesh Mancharanda and Shreya CR who will be presenting us a paper titled Mythical Genesis of Telugu Vaisya.
It's a single author or 2 people?
It's 2 authors, ma'am.
Yeah. So both will be speaking?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So
Ma'am,
good afternoon to everyone, to the chairs and the organizers.
21 have 014 Vaishnavi 2.
Okay.
Could anyone
so
please?
Shreyas and I, myself, Dyuvan, we are from Christ University, and we'll be presenting our paper, The Mythical Genesis of the Telugu Vaishyas. Just can you present? Right. So to introduce our paper, the Arya Vaishyas, also called the Komatis, are a trading community with their origin in present-day state of Andhra Pradesh. They are predominantly Telugu-speaking and are traders by profession in most cases. In this paper, we seek to explore the origin story that the community believes in, according to their sacred text, which is called the Kanyaka Purana. We also attempt to trace the historical development of the community from the late medieval period up till the present times. We use the theoretical framework laid down by the functionalist school of sociology to study the origin and evolution of the community. We mainly use Parsons, Durkheim, and Radcliffe Brown to study the sociological framework of development. Shreyas will discuss about the mythical origins of the communities first.
Okay, so about the origin story or the origin text of the Komiti community, it is known as the Kanyaka Puranam, and it remains to be a sacred text for the community. A very brief synopsis of the story goes like the head of Penugonda, that is the origin place where the Komitis used to live. The head of Penugonda, known as Kusuma Sreshti, later the Sreshti name evolved into Setti, and his wife Kusumamba were childless. So they performed a sacrificial ritual called as the Putrikamishti Yagam, and they had they had twin children, and they named the daughter as Vasavi and the son as Virupaksha. Vasavi grew up to be a very extremely beautiful and a wise child who was revered by the Komati community. And the ruler of Raja Mahendravaram, that is King Vishnuvardhana, and according to few sources, he's also believed to be the Chalukyan king as well. So when Vishnuvardhana came to visit Penugonda, he fell in love with Vasavi and demanded to marry her. But Kusuma Sreshi denied the request by telling that he's from the Kshatriya clan and they're Vaishyas as their traders, and their rituals or their customs would not allow for such a marriage. But then the king threatened to abduct and marry her. And one day, all of the elders of the community had a secret meeting, and only one or two Gotras or lineage people, they decided to perform immolation or something known as Agni Pravesham, and along with Vasavi. And Vasavi consented for the same. And on one fine day, when they actually performed Agni Pravesham, Vasavi emerged in her true form as goddess Vasavi Kanyaka Parmeshwari, and she still remains to be the familial deity of the Komitis, and ordered them to be traders and practice endogamy, or else they would not prosper. Now, coming to the functionalists, this was the brief overview of the whole Puranam. Now, coming to the functionalist overview, scholars like Durkheim and Parsons have, emphasized on the stratification of the stratifications of the groups as well. Now, the whole, society is seen in structures, and the factors for the functional factors is the causal factors, sorry, the causal factors for the Komitis is that they believe in their spiritual needs, they believe in their origins, and this has resulted in their linking with the origins or linking with their text as well, a community as a whole. And then later, they did not want a kshatriya, or they did not want somebody else outside the community to dictate them. So they had more stratifications in order to preserve their power, preserve their social status. Now we'll be moving on to the historical trajectory of the Komitis.
So during the late medieval period, we see that the Arya Vaishyas have maintained an influential position in economics as well as society. Records from Kakatiya rule indicate that they were donors of major temples and organized influential trade guilds. Under the Vijayanagara Empire, they were employed in managing the royal treasuries and also held key administrative roles. Prominent Telugu poets like Srinatha and Malana shower praises on the Vaishya community and celebrate their prosperity. This position of theirs that was so close to the ruling class is rather peculiar. We note that the community was in conflict with the ruling classes in their origin story. This change of stance to work in tandem with the rulers, who are supposed to be the religious rivals, is explained by the Radcliffe Brown structuralism. He argues in his theory that elements in society do not function according to predetermined design. Groups within society act in a manner that is adaptive and specialized. Due to this, the Komitis and the ruling class stopped conflict and adapted to working with each other to make society carry on and persist. Next slide. Okay, the Komitis adapted to changing conditions in India as the country moved into the colonial period. They continue to be influential actors in international trade.
You have got 1 minute to wrap up, Diwan.
Yeah, okay, fine, ma'am.
Records from British East India Company times identify the Arya Vaishyas as the most prominent capitalists on the Coromandel coast. They occupied the highest position on the hierarchy of traders of the region too. They did face opposition during this period, though. The committees had sought the position of the twice-born Vaishya in the caste system for a long time. They continuously faced backlash from the other castes, higher caste communities, such as the Balija and the Niyogi Brahmins, for this claim. British records of the time show caste riots breaking out because the committees attempted to perform the Vedic head ceremony. The resolution to this problem largely came through the means described by Parsons in his theory of societal integration. He claimed that conflicts in society resolve through the establishment of social institutions. This is exactly what the committees did. They organized institutions like the Arya Vaishya Mahasabha that responded to the attacks by the other castes while also working with them to resolve their differences. These conflicts were resolved by the time of independence, and we will see how the community has fared since that time.
Can you wrap up, please? Finish,
Yes,
your
ma'am.
time is
Yes, ma'am.
over.
This is the last topic.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. In conclusion, moving on to the contemporary times and with the available data which we have with respect to Gupta's Gupta's research in 1999, we can see that the text continues to dictate the community's functioning, be it with their occupation, their religious structure, their rituals, and their practice in endogamy. So, in conclusion, this our paper throws light on the effect of caste system in Indian society, and as to how there is further scope of study into the future trajectory of the Telugu Vaishya. So thank you.
So thank you. I would just like to ask you, you have spoken about the mythical genesis. Now, how do you relate this mythical genesis to contemporary times? What aspects they have taken, and how are they functioning?
Ma'am, so as according to the story, and since their practice of endogamy is now like divinely ordained, a lot of the Arya Vaishyas or the Komatis in general still do practice endogamy, and many of them still remain to be traders as well. And with also respect to their societal structure, and they have a lot of associations, or they have a lot of clubs or trusts only to cater the needs of the Arya Vaishyas. So I believe that it still remains, the mythical genesis is still relevant, or it still, continues to affect in contemporary times.
Thank you.
Any more questions, ma'am?
No.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, guys. Next up, we have Mohammad Abdurazak from St. Joseph's University presenting his paper on Dakini, the decline of lingua franca.
Is he present to present the paper?
Ma'am, I don't think he is present in the meeting.
So then you go to the next.
Move on to the next person, Manoj from Christu Jayanti University College, presenting a paper on linguistic transitions in Karnataka's language.
Ma'am, can you just give me about 30 seconds? I need to just connect the screen. Good evening, ma'am. My name is Manoja Yadavilli. I am from Christu Jayanti College, an undergraduate scholar. My topic is on the linguistic transitions within the inscriptions of Karnataka, or the language of Karnataka. where I'll be exploring the inscriptions and the languages in the inscriptions that have been used since the time of the Mauryans in the 3rd century BCE to the Vijayanagara Empire in the 1500s. So the aspects of discussion that I'll be seeing today is to trace the language that the various dynasties have used in their administration as well as in their inscriptions, the materials used in the inscriptions, the possible tools that could have been utilized, the time frames of an approximation that are used, and the influences for specific languages. The first aspect I will see under these is for the factors of why such transitions occurred. The main causes could be the changes in each ruler. As each subsequent ruler started their rule, they could have possibly decided to make subtle changes that over a long period of time were more visible. The second is the material of inscription. As we know, in Mauryan period, Ashokan inscriptions used rock and stone, whereas by the time it was the Vijayanagara Empire, stone and rock were still used for inscriptions, but also metal was used to inscribe important documents, as well as things that pertain to an individual or like a local administrative level. And then the changes in tools, with the change in material, the change in tools also you were made. The next is foreign relations and the trade that they had with foreign countries. Then the invasions of foreigners that might have influenced, because while as historical evidentiary, when a person invades into another nation, some people that came along with the invasion tend to settle into the region and assimilate. Sometimes the invaders dominate the culture, changing the culture of the area entirely. Sometimes they assimilate and they influence in more subtler ways. And then that will lead into the next factor, which is the changes in influences in local cultures. My first figures to present here are the Ashokan edicts of this. Figure 1 is the major pillar edict in Lauria Ararach in Bihar, India, which I think consists of 6 edicts, which is said to be around 3rd century BC. The second image is the Gavimat Minor Rock Edict in Koppal district of Karnataka. Both of these have been written in the Brahmi script and assumed to be in the Prakrit language, occasionally using the Sanskrit words that were known to the later times. But predominantly, Ashokan edicts consisted of Brahmi language and Brahmi script and Prakrit language. At the same time, many minor edicts contained Greek and Aramaic as well. The next image is this one, figure 3, which is the Nasik inscription by Gautami Balashri as we move on to the Shatavahana era, where they maintained the use of Prakrit and the script of Brahmi with very minor changes that were probably done due to the work of in each individual craftsman. The next figure, coming to a different dynasty that ruled Karnataka post the Shatavahanas, is the Western Kadambas, who gave these 2 inscriptions. There were more, but I couldn't find much inscriptions that had enough clarity to see. So this inscription in figure 4 is issued in about 450 BC by the crown prince Shantivarma, and this was in Talagunda. And this is an account of the Kadamba dynasty. The language by this time had changed to Sanskrit, though the script remained similar to Brahmi, but also still maintained a lot of changes. This is the old Kannada inscription in Halimiri, which is also about the same time as the Talagunda inscription, which is also known as the oldest Kannada inscription. And as we see, the letters in the inscription, though similar to a Brahmic language, use the Brahmic script, use the language of Old Kannada system. The next one in figure 6 is the time of Western Gangas, where the Old Kannada took predominant reference when it came to a spoken language perspective, but the script was still elemented with Brahmic elements, as well as a changing transition into a more older version of the Kannada script that we know today. This was in the Gomateshwara statue in Shravanbelgola, which was about 980 CE. The next figure in figure 7 is the Aihole inscription in the Meguti Jain temple, which was written about 7th century AD. During the time of Chalukyas. The script is an old Kannada script or a version of an old Kannada script, but uses impeccable Sanskrit grammar. And it was issued by Ravi Kirti, who sang praises of the king Pulakesi II of Chalukyas. In figure 8, it shows the Vijayanagara Empire script. A few centuries have been skipped here. I will come back to them.
Manuja, can you please wrap up? You have got 1 more minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Please wrap up.
So yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The Vijayanagara Empire. By the time we come to there, we see that the predominantly what is known as the Telugu Kannada script now is used a lot. So during the transition between Chalukyas and Vijayanagara Empire, Rashtrakutas, Yadavas, and Hoysalas, all of them used an old Kannada language, some using Sanskrit and Marathi for their administration. But the script and the language in the inscriptions that are found within Karnataka, some contain Sanskrit, some contain the old Kannada. With that, I conclude my presentation. Ma'am, any questions?
Thank you, Manuja. You have taken us across the various language and the script used across dynasties. But then you could have made a small analysis, interpretation as to what was the predominant matter that was contained in those inscriptions. You only said, no, what was the analysis? It is like information gathering. This period, this language, this script, this script, this script. But what is the inference? What do you feel that this throws light upon?
Ma'am, this throws light upon the gradual transition from like a fully Brahmic language in the ancient era to a completely different language or a completely different script from the 3rd century to the 15th century. And from the 15th century, since written records were more in other forms as well, the script has stuck more similar in the past 500 years compared to the time before. But as much as I have tried to gather more information on the ways that the script changed, the results of research were quite inconclusive. And even for the language changes, I do assume that the languages were spoken in different formats long ago as well. But the influences of the local culture have raised into the administrative powers. Whereas in the Mauryan era, the influence of the North Indian languages and the the centralized administrative strategy of Mauryas kept like from local languages seeping into the inscriptions. But as time passed and rulers and influences of the rulers and the relations of the rulers with their citizens as well as with the areas around them changed, local languages started to make their way slowly into the inscriptions as far as my observation has gone. But for doing further research, lots of results just leave inconclusive or open-ended questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sanjana, can we go to the next one? Sanjana, you're muted yourself.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you so much, everyone. With this, we conclude with our first sub-theme, that is tasting the ancient Indian legacy. Moving on, we have our next sub-theme, that is years on religious history. And I call upon Rishya Chanda from Christ University, who will be presenting his paper on Ramayana as depicted in the terracotta plaques of late medieval Bengal.
Yeah, just give me 10 to 15 seconds to present. I will be here.
Rishia, we can't hear you. You're not audible. You're muted yourself.
Yeah, sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Rishya Chanda. I'm from Kolkata, West Bengal, and I'm doing my degree in Christ University in the Department of History and International Studies. And my paper is on Ramayana as depicted in the terracotta plaques of late medieval Bengal temples. Now, as early as the Gupta and post-Gupta periods, temples in India have embedded by various carvings and patterns. Although earlier it was only the Buddhist temples with Jataka tales carved on them, later on temples with stories like Krishna Lila, Ramayana, and Mahabharata could also be found. But in Bengal, there was a totally separate medium of expression, and it was terracotta. What is terracotta? Terracotta, which literally means baked earth in Italian, is a form of maybe one of the earliest form of plastic art. Terracotta involves baking a piece of clay that has been molded into a shape, baking a piece of clay under the sun and then under the fire, and then embedding this shape onto the temples to depict a story. Now, the alluvial soil in Bengal helped artisans master this art, which also helped artisans master this art. The first traces of terracotta were found in 9th century, and later on, a vast amount of terracotta have been found from 15th century to 19th century. Now, what is terracotta is done. Ramayana is depicted in Bengal terracotta. Ramayana has a totally different form in Bengal's. Yeah. The original Ramayana written by Valmiki was in Sanskrit, which was not understandable by the common people of Bengal, even the most literate people. So a priest or a poet named Krittibash Ojha, he translated Ramayana from Sanskrit to Bengali. And in doing so, he changed the narrative a bit. He changed the narrative in certain ways that it fully became more relevant to the common people of Bengal. In his narrative, Rama had descended from his throne of a mighty ruler through the soft soil of Bengal. In his story, people could relate to Ramayana so much that they wept for his sorrows, they felt joy during his battle of Lanka, and this also influenced the artisans to depict this Krittibashi Ramayana, as it is called, into the architecture of Bengal temples. This is an example of temple in which Krittibashi Ramayana has been adopted. Kotulpur Siddhar temple in Bankura is one of the many temples in Bengal which have exquisite terracotta architecture still implanted on them. This terracotta plaque, which depicts Rama and Hanumana, possibly Hanuman, is a direct influence from the Krittibashi Ramayana.
Your slides are not moving, Rishya. It is just stuck in the first slide itself.
I'm changing them. Is it not visible?
Jane, can you see?
No, it's in the first slide itself.
First slide itself.
You just switch it off and switch it on again.
Is it visible now?
1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
This, Ramayana is depicted in Bengal terracotta. I just explained. Krittivashi Ramayana was adopted in Bengal terracotta instead of Valmiki Ramayana. Krittivashi Ramayana has some major changes than Valmiki Ramayana, which we will see in the next few slides. This is a prime example of Krittivashi Ramayana being depicted in Bengal terracotta. This is from a temple called Kotalpur Siddhar Temple, which was made in 1833, in Bakura. This temple, which was one of the many temples in Bengal, which have still exquisite works of terracotta blocks implanted on them. Now here you can see a Rama art figure being depicted along with the Hanumana temple. Now, how is it possible to know that this one is from Krittivashi Ramayana and not from Valmiki Ramayana? The thing is, in Krittivashi Ramayana, Hanumana has been depicted as not as a humanoid character with serious nature and weapons in his hands, like it has been in Valmiki Ramayana, but rather it has been depicted as a simple ape who is a true devotee of Rama and is of joyful nature and likes to play tricks and some kind of pranks on everyone. This highlights the Krittivashi Ramayana. Second, this one is from Char Bangla temple in Boranagar. As you can see, there are 10 heads on the figure and 10 hands, which only depicts Ravana. This Char Bangla temple is also one of the major temples in Bengal, which have exquisite, one of the best architecture, terracotta plaques still implanted on them. In this Ravana temple, there is something peculiar can be seen. His two hands are folded. Why are the two hands folded and for whom? As it seems, this is also a depiction of Krittivashi Ramayana and not Valmiki Ramayana. How can we understand that? In Krittivashi Ramayana, Ravana has been a secret devotee of Rama or Vishnu. During his final moments, before his death, Ravana disclosed his identity to Rama. As he said, "You are the Lord of destitute like myself. You are the rescuer and redeemer of fallen ones. Kindly place your feet on my head, so that I may die peacefully and regain your grace after termination of this heinous life." These words or this character of Ravan had influenced artisans to depict Ravana as a character who is not so evil, but rather with two folded hands praying to Lord Rama. The next terracotta plaque is from Pateshwar temple, which is a Deul tile temple.
Risha, can you have got only 1 more minute? Can you please wrap up?
Yeah, ma'am, I'm almost done. It's a Deul style temple, which is just 4 temples together with various stories like stories of goddess Durga, Krishna Lila, and various other inscriptions on them. This is also a peculiar terracotta plaque, as you can see here. There is a central figure here. This one. This shouldn't be there if it was depicted as a Valmiki Ramayana. This goddess Durga, there is no trace of goddess Durga in the Valmiki Ramayana. Rather, when Krittivash translated Ramayana from Sanskrit to Bengali, he changed the narrative and included the goddess Durga in there. As the story goes, Ravana worshipped goddess Durga before the final battle, and goddess Durga, being impressed by his worship, blessed her for the battle. Rama, who knew this, he thought that he also had to do this offer. He also needed blessings. So Rama offered her 300 lotus as an offering. Pleased by Rama's offering, goddess Durga in turn turned towards Rama and gave him her blessings instead. This can be viewed in the inscription that Ravana is also praying to goddess Durga, whereas Rama here is also praying to goddess Durga. It's a complete change of narrative from Valmiki Ramayana to Krittivashi Ramayana, which influenced the local artisans so much that even goddess Durga, which is not a part of the story, could also be seen in Ramayana templates. Now, to wrap up, this form of art called terracotta has been in Bengal for so many centuries and on. And this is a matter of pride and joy that it exists. Krittivash Ojha and the artisans who depicted story of Ramayana into the terracotta plaques of Bengal have just not only translated the story into Bengali, but also included the common narratives of local Bengal and local artisans and local people into the story. Now, the story of Ramayana had been found on temple architecture all over India, including outside of India in the Angkor Wat temples of Cambodia. But what is special about the Bengal architecture? This terracotta art and complete change of narrative from Ramayana so that it could to depict the local architecture.
Your time is up, Risha.
Yeah, I'm done. It's finished. Local architecture is so special about it. Done.
Now, I would like to ask, what was the period of this Kirti Basi Ramayana? When was it written?
Kirtivasi Ramayana, ma'am, the period is actually not clear about it, but it was before AD, before first century, as much as you know.
And why do you think the concept of Durga was brought in here?
The concept of Durga was brought in here for one, not any clear reasons have been given, but because it was translated from Sanskrit to Bengali, and most of the Bengalis at that time were illiterate or didn't know Sanskrit very much. So the concept of Durga, which was a matter of pride and joy to Bengalis, but was brought in so that the people of Bengal could relate more to the subject, relate more to the epic, which would make it more relevant to them, and they could know about it more, and it would be a common talking topic or something.
No, see, you're saying it is BC. This Durga concept is not that very, at that time, Durga concept was not there.
To be honest,
so that means it is a later work.
Most probably,
Because where was Durga? In BC, it was not there. You just check up onto that, find out
I
as
haven't
to
checked
which
this part
period it
actually.
was, and why they introduced this Durga as a concept, wherein both Rama and Ravana, both of them pray to her. Because the concept of Durga Puja that you see now is much later. It was not there the early period at all.
This one is from late 19th century, early 19th century. So this concept of Durga not only changed, but various other things. Most of the characters in Rama, Lakshmana, Sita, Hanuman, Ravana, all of them changed a certain bit to adjust to the common understanding of people at that time.
No, what I'm saying is the time period that you have slotted doesn't seem to be matching.
Yeah,
changes the entire interpretation, because if it is BC, one understanding; if it is AD or something, it will be another understanding. So you keep that in mind. You keep that in mind because many of us forget to keep the time period in mind, because at one particular time period there are certain characteristics there. You cannot extrapolate or interpolate something that has happened later on and say that it belongs to this particular period. So you keep that time factor in mind when you make any such presentations.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Sanjana, are you done with that presentation? Okay. Sanjana, may I?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can go ahead and
Great.
introduce.
So I just took the privilege of welcoming the next participant from Sanjana. The next person who is going to present our paper is special because he's a student from a school. So for the first time in a conference, we are having a school student presenting a paper, and that makes it a little special. So I thought of introducing to you all Kashif Aman Sharif Sheikh from Sloka Cambridge International School, Hyderabad. And he's going to present on the title. The title of the paper is Buddhism in South India, an investigation on the rich tapestry of Buddhism in the area surrounding the Krishna River in central Andhra Pradesh and southeastern Telangana. So to you, Aman, all the best.
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. I would like to thank Mr. Sonal B. Manoj for the opportunity first. And now moving into my presentation. Is it okay if I share my screen?
You have muted yourselves.
I'm just trying to set up the screen share.
You can start, Aman. You're muted. Aman, you're muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
This screen sharing thing is working fidgetingly. If you don't mind, can I take a few minutes to understand what's happening?
Sonal, if we can send you the if the next candidate can come, and if we can send you the PowerPoint to you meanwhile,
That would be fine, right?
you can
Yeah, we can
present
do
it,
that.
and
You
then
can
he
call the
can.
next.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Aman, you
You
send
can
it
call
to
the next
sir.
participant.
You send your
Okay, ma'am.
PowerPoint to sir.
Thank you.
Sanjana, you can call the next participant.
Next, we have Vandita from St. Joseph's University who will be presenting the paper titled Indian Parables Detained to Only Myths and Legends. Over to you, Vandita.
Vandita, can we have you on screen, please? Sanjana, she's not responding. I think you can proceed with the next participant.
Next up, we have Chaitra Shri GA and Nandakumar T from St. Joseph's University again, presenting the paper on glory of the Vijayanagar Empire and Tirumala.
Yeah.
Sanjana, does this come under the sub-theme of religious history?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, on religious history.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yeah, you can share your screen also.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So good evening, everyone. We'll be presenting about the Vijayanagar Empire and the connection to Tirumala. Essentially, the patronage and the donation that rulers of Vijayanagar Empire, such as Krishnadevaraya, have provided Tirumala. So, as we all know, Tirumala, the main temple, is one of the most visited temples on the planet, and its a major source of wealth was the donations given by Krishnadevaraya in the 16th century. He was a devout patron and also a frequent visitor. Nandakumar will be going forward with the legend of Tirumala.
Nandakumar, you're on mute, so you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so um, the sacred Tirumala temple, rooted in Hindu mythology, finds its genesis in the Varaha Purana, and the legend begins with the sage Brigu Maharshi cursing Lord Brahma and Shiva. So the Brigu Maharshi will curse Brahma, saying that no person in the world will worship Brahma in the planet. So will not see any temples for Brahma because of the Brigu Maharshi's curse. And when he goes to Kailasa to meet Shiva, So Shiva will be doing Tandava with his consort Parvati. So and Shiva, like with his expressions, he'll say, Bhrigu Maharshi, that he will come and he'll speak to him. So at that time, like the Bhrigu Maharshi was like so angry, and he tells him that no one will uh, worship Shiva in his real form, and he'll curse him, saying that he will be only worshipped in the form of linga. So if we go to any Shiva temple in the India or in the world also, we can only see the form of linga, but not the form of actual form of Shiva. And when he finally goes to Vaikunta, so they like Lord Vishnu will be in Yoga Nidra with his consort Sri Lakshmi. So by saying this, like Bhrigu Maharshi will get anger, and he'll go and kick the chest of the uh, uh, Lord Vishnu. So at that time, so Lord Vishnu, without getting angry, Lord Vishnu calmly addresses the situation, plucking out the eye beneath the Bhrigu Maharshi's feet. And so that like the angerness which is in the eye of the Bhrigu Maharshi's leg will go off. By seeing all this, Sri Lakshmi will get angry, because like in front of her itself, his husband got kicked by the Maharshi and he was not punished. So for this, so Sri Lakshmi will go to earth. In search of Sri Lakshmi, Lord Vishnu also comes to earth. So when Lord Vishnu comes to earth, he would have promised Yashoda when he was in the form of Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna had promised his mother Yashoda that he will come back as his son, and he will get married uh, with her. I mean, like in her presence. So when he comes to the world in this Kali Yuga, he will marry Padmavati, the daughter of Akasha Raja. Um, to marry her for the grand wedding, he will take like a loan or lot of money from the Lord Kubera. So the each and every money which we go and offer in the Tirumala temple, it's believed that all the money which we put it there are given. The Lord Venkateshwara uses it to pay the loans of the Kubera. And regarding the architecture and about the temple of the Tirumala, the intricate rituals, architecture, marvels, and mysterious experiences within the temple create an atmosphere of spiritual bliss, with thousands making pilgrimage temples. Those Mahadwaram, Vendi Vakili, Bangaru Vakili stand as testaments to centuries of devotion. And Chaitra will continue regarding the other temples which are in Tirupati and Tirumala.
Yeah. So most of the pilgrims.
Please wrap up, please. The time is over. One more minute you have got.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. So most of the pilgrims who visit Tirumala only visit the main temple and come back, but there are many other temples and places of divinity. For example, the Varaha Swami temple is a temple dedicated to the original guardian of the Tirumala hills, from whom Lord Venkateshwara asked for a place to stay. So he offered Varaha Swami the first rite of worship. So even today, it's believed that it is it is devotees should visit Varaha Swami temple first before offering the respect to Venkateshwara for the kindness he showed Venkateshwara. Papa Vinasham is a replica of the main river of Ganga. It is said to dissolve people of sins, and it also has a shrine dedicated to the river Ganga. Akasha Ganga is said to be the place of birth of Lord Hanuman, as Anjana Devi prayed to be blessed with a child. At this exact place, it also has a small waterfall. Bedi Anjaneya Swami is a shrine within the main temple complex, where it's observed. It's one of a kind because Lord Hanuman is observed to be worshipped in chains. This main deity is shown to be in handcuffs, as he was restrained by his mother. Um, Venugopala Swami is a temple dedicated to Krishna on the Tirumala hills, and Japali Tirtham is a temple dedicated to Lord Hanuman on the Tirumala hills. We can see orange squirrels, which is the Malabar giant squirrel, which is abundant in this place. Shilatoranam is a one of a kind rock structure
Please
in
wrap
the
up.
world. Yes,
Wrap
yes,
up,
ma'am.
Chaitra.
Yes, ma'am. So it's one of a kind rock formation in the world. As you can see, it is in the form of a garland. In the local language, it's called as a garland of rocks, Shila Torana. So Kapila Tirtham is a place where the presiding deity is Lord Manjunatha Swami, who is called Kapileshwara, as he was as the manifestation of this idol was the result of the penance of Kapila Maharshi. Padmavati temple in Tirupati is the temple dedicated to the consort of Lord Venkateshwara, and Govindraj Perumal temple is the temple which is dedicated to his brother, Lord Venkateshwara Swami's brother, Govindraj Swami. The deity is in a reclining position surrounded by his two consorts. We have the Kalyana Venkateshwara Swami temple for those who cannot make it up to the hills, and Srivari Padalu is said to be the footprints of the Lord when he first touched the hills of Tirupati. So yes, we would like to conclude by saying that the antiquity of Tirumala's history is evident on the patterns time has etched onto rocks of Shilatoranam or the footprints of the Lord at Srivari Padalu. The genuineness of its history is evidenced in how earnestly his devotees chant Govinda Govinda without worrying about the tiredness as they stand in queues for hours. So we may not know if the debt that Lord Venkateshwara Swami took is repaid, but he has certainly been repaid in love by his devotees. Thank you.
Chaitra, I would like to ask, you have given the title as Glory of Vijayanagara Empire and Tirumala, but you
Yes.
have not linked in your talk.
Yes, ma'am. It is in the main paper. The thing is, we had to cut short due to time. But Krishnadeva Raya makes frequent appearances as a donor to many of these temples as a patron king, and his brother Achyuta Raya also has significantly contributed to the temples in and around Tirumala. Yes, ma'am.
But that doesn't become the glory of Vijayanagara, no? You should tell how they have invested in art, architecture, and why this temple of Tirumala has been made so famous.
Yes, ma'am. Even though this temple was first constructed by Pallavas, it was not the actual stone temple we see now. Majority of its structure was because of the donations of Krishna Deva Raya, and he also frequently walked up the steps. The current temple we see now is due to his contributions. So that is the glory which Vijayanagara Empire has left in the contributions that are made to this temple.
Then Nandakumar had said that Shiva is only seen in an iconic form. That means like a linga. But then how do you say about Nataraja?
Yes, Nataraja is a unique form of Shiva. He's worshipped as
but then he said, accepting this linga form, no other form of Shiva is worshipped.
So Bhrigu Maharshi had cursed Shiva saying this.
No, that
but
is okay. I agree. You see, whatever legend is legend, but when legend is not linked to contemporary times, the understanding is missing.
Ma'am, I think Bhrigu Maharshi meant that Lord Shiva will not be worshipped in a pleased position. Like in the Prasanna position, we see many gods as he is worshipped as Nataraja, which is a ferocious form, which is doing Tandava. So it's the cosmic dance which destroys creation, and that is different from the main deity. So thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Up next, we have Kashif Aman Sharif Sheikh. from Shloka Cambridge International School, Hyderabad, who will be presenting his paper titled Buddhism in South India, an investigation on the rich tapestry of Buddhism in the areas surrounding the Krishna River in central Andhra Pradesh and southern eastern Telangana. Over to you, Aman.
Thank you. First of all, let's go on your screen. Okay. So I'd like to start off with the title, as mentioned, Buddhism in South India, an investigation on the rich tapestry of Buddhism in the areas surrounding the Krishna River in central Andhra Pradesh and southeastern Telangana. As mentioned before, my name is Kashif Aman Sharif Sheikh, and I am a student studying 8th grade. So I'd like to give a brief introduction to the topic. So this is not given as much importance as other religions when compared to Hinduism or in India or Christianity across the world, or even Islam in the Arabian regions or even around the world. Buddhism is not given as much importance in India as it should be given. Buddhism has even been essential for the development of Indian culture because there are various elements and aspects of Buddhist culture that have come and become adapted into the culture of contemporary India. This is a shot from a Buddhist site in this region. So this is just a brief timeline to just outline the aspects of what happened when. The introduction of Buddhism to this region happened somewhere in and around the 3rd century BCE, and it virtually disappeared from the region during the 14th century CE with very rare and different aspects persisting, but not in its full glory. In the 18th to 19th century CE, the discovery of the Buddhist sites occurred, or rather the rediscovery, causing much research to be put in, but not with conclusive results as it should have. So I searched for many sources and majorly focused on reading the current research papers and books. The current research doesn't focus at all on the South Indian artifacts. Most focus on the origins of Buddhism in Magadha and Kosala, and the northeastern area of the Indian subcontinent. They don't talk about how Buddhism has spread to the southern part of India and how it's been critical in the culture there. So I decided to write my paper on that to focus and give more importance to the cultural aspects of Buddhist culture in southern India. So the problem with this topic is that most of the Buddhist sites were destroyed or salvaged on discovery. An example being the Amaravati Stupa, one of the largest stupas in the region. It's said to have been destroyed and salvaged by a local zamindar who removed the stones from the stupa and used it to construct other buildings. So little is left of these various Buddhist artifacts to be understood and sent through information across the world. The papers that are written on this topic aren't very conclusive and are backdated by at least 10 to 15 years. So there isn't much focus on the topic now with the updated research works and updated research tactics that are used. Even the Archaeological Survey of India has scant data about the artifacts. So these are the 3 main regions I focused on in this research. The first being Nagarjuna Konda. So Nagarjuna Konda is an island actually that's situated in the Nagarjuna Sagar Dam, which is built across a hill on the Krishna River. So Nagarjuna Konda is said to actually have been a Buddhist learning center or a university. Even the remains of the university still exist there. Acharya Nagarjuna, one of the major Buddhist monks of the time, is said to have taught there between the 3rd and 4th century CE. Amaravati, with the largest stupa in the area, is arguably the most well known among these sites, but still it's not as well known as it should be. And many people don't even think about going there, even though it's the declared capital of Andhra Pradesh. So Amaravati contained a large stupa, which, as I mentioned before, was salvaged by a local zamindar. Much of the artifacts and stones that were salvaged from the stupa are yet to be recovered, and this salvaging happened somewhere between the 18th and 19th century CE. And the third and final site that I would like to discuss is Goli or Buddham. These both are two very obscure Buddhist sites in the region with very small amounts of archaeological evidence left to say that these are Buddhist sites. But in Goli, we find a very small stupa, which was built on one of the tributaries of the Krishna River. And this stupa also contains many artifacts that lead us to believe that Buddhism was very widespread in this region. And Buddhism also contains many different archaeological artifacts and inscriptions, even though Buddhism is much closer to the Indian Ocean or the Andaman Sea as compared to the other sites. So,
Amanjan, can you please wrap up?
Yeah, this is just the last part. I just wanted to say how the conclusive thing that I've tried to understand is why did Buddhism disappear and as quickly as it did, and why did the cultural aspects not be as prominent in modern Indian culture as they are today, as they are should be. Thank you.
See, the title of this session, this thing is Celebrating Unexplored Histories. But Nagarjuna Konda and Amaravati is very well known. When you speak about Buddhist art, you bring about this Amaravati art. Why have you not? Why did you bring these two? You could have, and you said South India. Why have you not touched Karnataka? There is a place called Kanaganahalli where a unique slab of Ashoka's picture is there. Nowhere do you find saying this Piyadasana. There is a part of that is there. For the first time, you find the how Ashoka looked.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about these two topics first because if we go directly into the least known topics, it won't give much of a backstory. I have to talk about the Amaravati style of architecture and how Nagarjunakonda spread the Buddhism across this region. So we can bring into the less obscure, smaller parts. The problem with I wanted to focus on this region because it seems to be not as celebrated as it should be. So I wanted to make sure to focus on that region. And what I did is I wanted to talk about the more major aspects of the region before going into the lesser known aspects.
Sanjana, you call for the next participant?
Yes, ma'am. With this, we come to the end of our second sub-theme, that is years on religious history. Moving on to the next sub-theme, we have smelling the cultural richness, and Anhita T and Samhita S from MES College of Arts, Commerce and Science would be presenting their paper titled Exploring Kodagu, History, Culture and Ethnicity.
Sanjana, are they not ready?
Ma'am, they don't seem to be in the meeting. I will.
Okay.
Ankita and Samita? No, Sanjana, I don't think you can proceed with the next one.
Okay, next up we have Rashi and Srishti from St. Joseph's University presenting their paper titled Unveiling the Evolution of Meat in India.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shrishti Manjrekar. I'm Rashi Gurjar. And we are presenting to you our paper on the topic, Unveiling the Evolution of Meat in Ancient India. Generally, when we think about meat consumption in Indian history...
Excuse me, Srishti, can you please share your screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, can proceed.
Yes. Oh. So generally, when we talk about meat consumption in Indian history, we associate it with the advent of Islam. But Indian society have embraced non-vegetarianism, especially meat consumption and animal slaughter, primarily within the sacrificial context during the ancient period. The evolution of the vegetarian ethic in India, it occurred sometime before the Common Era, when the sense of communion between humans and animals emerged. So this belief was based on the conviction that all living beings contained an Atman or the innermost conscious self. This communion was further enhanced by the notion of reincarnation, which emerged during the late Vedic period. Then we have the Indus Valley civilization, which is also known as the Harappan civilization. It is the oldest civilization of India, tracing back up to 5,000 years. And over here, from the excavations in Rakhigiri, which is one of the Harappan sites, it reveals that the Harappans, they used to consume meat from cattle like cow, ox, and also from sheep and goat. And some of the excavations we have found have unearthed numerous bones from the fishes like jack and catfish, which means that they also included fish in their diet. The Vedic period, it also witnessed a practice of animal sacrifices, which was a prominent religious expression during that time. So animals, they were offered to various gods through the medium of fire. The Vedas gives us information about more than 250 animals, of which around 500 were fit to be sacrificed. I'll let Rashi continue from here.
So the Rig Veda is the oldest of the four Vedas, and it contains several hymns and the mention of cow slaughter. For example, one hymn states that the mantras are chanted so that the animal will not feel pain and will go to heaven when sacrificed. And another hymn mentions that how different Vedic gods have different preference for animal meat. And even from the the Brahmanas are collection of ritual texts dating back to around 900 BC, also mention cow slaughter. For example, the Kshatriya Brahmana states that as per the religious duty, dharma, a bull or cow should be killed to be eaten when a guest arrives. However, there are also instances in the Vedas where cow slaughter is discouraged. For example, the Kshatriya Brahmana itself advised against killing cows in certain contexts. This suggests that there was no single unified view on cow slaughter in the ancient India. The Mahabharata. Post-Vedic. In the post-Vedic period, in the post-Vedic period, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana are the two of the most remarkable Hindu epics, and they contain a wealth of information of Indian culture, religion, and philosophy. While the two epics are not clear on the issue of cow slaughter, there is evidence to suggest that it was practiced in ancient India. However, the epics also contain strong statement against the slaughter of animals and the consumption of meat. The Mahabharata mentions King Deva, who served 2,000 cows daily in his kitchen, distributing their meat and grains among the Brahmins. It also describes dishes such as rice cooked with minced meat. Hello? Okay. However, the epic also contains... Sorry?
Yeah, carry on, carry on.
However, the epic also contains strong statements against the slaughter of animals and the consumption of meat. It dedicates 3 entire chapters of the evils of meat eating, comparing it to eating the flesh of one's son and describing those who indulge in such practice as amongst the vilest of human beings. The Ramayana documents Lord Rama's birth, which occurred after the father, the Dashratha, slaughtered many animals, primarily cows, as prescribed by the Dharma Shastras. During Ram, Lakshman, and Sita's stay in the Dandakaryana forest, they are said to have consumed mamsam buddhana, a rice dish that includes meat and vegetable. In the later Vedic period, the Smriti literature, a collection of Hindi law books composed between 200 BC and 500 AD, reflects a growing sense on the unease with the slaughter involved in the sacrificial cult. This is evident that in the increasing reference to the benefits of the in the benefits of the absenteeism from meat, Buddha did not like explicitly prohibit the consumption of meat, and however he did teach that all living beings have a right to life and that killing is wrong. He also taught that meat should only be eaten if it is offered as a alms, and if the killing is not done in presence of the monks. And the consumption of meat in the Shushrut Samhita, the Shushrut Samhita,
Can you please wrap up, please?
Yes, ma'am. Last paragraph. That's it. And the Shushrut Samhita is a medical, basically, it is done by the physician, Sushruta. She lists out some. She lists 8 varieties of meat that can be consumed. It also states that those recovering from the injuries, growing children, people doing extreme physical labor, and most importantly, expecting mothers consumes carefully prepared meat. So here, Shishti will take over.
Yes, I'll take the conclusion. So after analyzing the historical and the textual evidence, it is evident that meat consumption, including beef, was prevalent in the ancient Indian society. So we have the archaeological proofs from the Indus Valley civilization, the animal sacrifices from the Vedic period, with references to texts like Rig Veda. We have the Mahabharata and Ramayana from the post-Vedic period, which glorifies both the non-violence towards animal and depicts the consumption of meat. But however, towards the later Vedic period, we see a growing discomfort with the butchery which was associated with the sacrificial rituals. References to the benefits of abstinence from the meat also becomes more prominent. So the dietary practices in ancient India, they were very diverse and there were varying perspectives on meat consumption. While meat, including beef, was consumed, there was also ethical considerations and a growing inclination towards vegetarianism. Thank you all.
Jane, you can ask any question you want to ask her. I don't have any.
No, you can ask Dr. Geeta.
No, you can ask Jane. I don't have any question here.
Okay. What were the actual sources that you'll refer to when you prepared this paper?
Ma'am,
Like what was the methodology?
We have went through a book which is named as A Communion of Subject, which tells us about the animals and religion, science and ethnics, which was written by Paul Waldo and the Kimberly Panton. And we have even gone through the interviews done by the people and even through the articles.
There were 2-3 websites which we referred to, which had the articles of the people who had previously studied about each topic individually. So we kind of summed it up and added our interferences and concluded it.
Okay, so what would be the final findings of the paper? Like what exact? Give me in 2 lines. What was the conclusion?
I can say that India has always been a non-vegetarian. It's not like there's only eating veg. The thing that we follow during festivals that you cannot eat non-veg or you just have to eat veg, it's basically a kind of stereotype which we follow. It's actually on your own preference if you want to be a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian.
Okay, so it means it according to one's own convenience, you have rules and regulations being made.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I want to ask you, you have not brought in the concept of this meat in Jainism. That was also a very strong religion in ancient India. If you are talking about Buddhism, then why did you leave out Jainism?
Ma'am, can I answer your question in some time?
Ma'am, what I feel is like basically Jainism and Buddhism have a little bit of same ideology, and Buddhism and also like they had this ideology of that non-violence. So they believe. So we thought that the Buddhism and the Jainism have same ideology. So we ended like put it up in a same.
No, Rashi. There you make a lot of difference because Jainism believed in extreme asceticism, extreme penance, extreme vegetarianism, and they just did not believe in hurting a twig or a plant or an animal or a human being. Whereas Buddhism literally followed a middle path. Neither the extreme luxuries or the extreme, the superstitions of the Hinduism or extreme luxuries or even the extreme penance of Jainism. Buddha always followed a middle path.
They followed the middle path in all respects.
Okay, ma'am.
Jainism from the beginning did not get into non-vegetarianism. So that part of it, you could have brought it in.
Okay, ma'am.
Because both were contemporary religions, no? Okay. Good work.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sanjana, any more participants?
No, ma'am, I don't think there are any more
Okay.
participants.
Dr. Geeta, if you could just give your final comments.
On the whole, I should congratulate you, Dr. Jane, for the wonderful concept and theme that you have brought forth. Because usually you find that when we go for any seminars, it's only people with the PhDs or masters who are asked for it. And there is so much of talent and understanding even in the undergraduates, but there is no forum for them to also showcase their scholarship. So in that way, bringing this theme of unearthing narratives, celebrating unexplored histories, and young historians, giving them a forum to present their paper in the first place is a brilliant idea. And we need such exposure wherein we also will realize that what is the quality of the students, how much of research work they are capable of doing, how much of analysis they are capable of doing. I think by having this on a regular basis, at least once in a year, it will also prepare them when they finish their graduation and go to MSc. It will also prepare them how they should present their dissertation papers, because it gives them how to go about doing research. So I think if you can hold this once in a year, it will be a great service to young historians. And that way, the response I feel and the quality of paper has been really good. Now, coming to the first paper of Maria Phillips, it was a very interesting concept wherein through skeletal remains, you get to know so many aspects of a civilization. So you also, through the dental paleopathology, you come to know what was the diseases. Then by some bones on the pelvic region, you know what is the gender and what was the type of work they did and who are the people. So it was a very interesting, and also how the decline of the Indus Valley civilization came about. She brought it out very well. It was very interesting and something very different. Then in the mythical genesis of Telugu Vaishyas, both the presenters, they presented more on the Puranic and little bit on the historical, because what they should understand is we are all going to be budding historians. So there is need for doing away with the legends. Even if you bring the concept of legends, how does it relate to contemporary times? So that should be brought, and don't give more than 1 or 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes to the legend part, because that is not at all important. And as historians, we are not interested. So they could have concentrated on the historical records rather than on legends and Puranic aspects. Then there was Manojas, which was linguistic transitions in Karnataka language. She brought out how the language transisted through the various dynasties over a period of time in terms of the materials, tools, time frame, and the appropriations, then inscriptions. foreign trade. This was what was mentioned in her PPT presentations. But actually, she only, throughout the 5 minutes that was given to her, she only brought about the transition of the language of the inscriptions from this period, this language, this period to this language, and how the regular Kannada has come into this. But what do these inscriptions throw light upon? Agreed, it is she wanted to bring about linguistic transition, but it is this sort of a source, because
Dr. Geeta, you have muted yourself.
They could have also touched a bit as to what was the important linguistic understanding in these various inscriptions. It would have added more strength to their presentation. Then this is the first sub-theme, and in the second sub-theme, which is years of religious history, Rishya Chanda's presenting of the paper on Ramayana as depicted in the terracotta plaques of late medieval Bengal temples was very good. But he could have done a little more a bit of research, because like I told him, many of us, if you're not able to place the context, if you're not able to place at which period it takes place, then your interpretation doesn't hold much water. For example, when I asked him this Kirti Bashi Ramayana, he said it is BCE. And then he says, if it is BCE, how did it get influenced by Valmiki Ramayana? Then there are certain aspects which were not very clear, though, like for example, the inclusion of Durga, because that is all a later happening, not in the time frame of this Kirti Bhasha. He could have done a little bit of more research to make his paper more value added. It was good because it was a little known, because terracotta itself is a concept which is which all these temples are around 7th century AD, and that they are still living and having all these depictions, sculptural depictions, is really very interesting. But he should be very careful on how to place the time frame when you're talking about cultural imagery. Then the paper by Buddhism in South India, with special reference to Krishna area, and also in Tamil Nadu. But he concentrated more only on Andhra Pradesh. He could have, or he could have said Buddhism in Andhra Pradesh rather than in South India, and then saying Tamil Nadu. But otherwise, for a student of history to have presented a paper along with undergraduates, he really did work, but it needs little improvement. But then we can give a margin saying that he's a school student, and for a school student, I think he is 8th, 9th standard. Which class is it?
8th grade.
8th grade. So it is wonderful that a student of 8th standard has presented a paper amongst college students. So to that extent, we should say that he has done a good presentation, because he was not scared, not worried, just like a professional, just like the way he presented it is just like another college student presenting. You can't know that it was a school student. He had so much of confidence. So he should be a little careful about how he titles his paper. And even if he titles his paper, whether that thing finds a mention in his presentation. But otherwise, it was a good paper. Then we come to Chaitra, see the glory of Vijayanagara Empire and Tirumala. It was nice. But then when they were talking about, they spoke about legend and the description of the temples. But what was glorious about these Vijayanagara? Why did they build these temples? Why was it only Vaishnavism? Why not some other sect? So those aspects, if it had brought, then the glory of Vijayanagara Empire would have been better understood, because it was only a description of the various temples there and the legend. So I couldn't make out when these aspects were not covered, how the glory of Vijayanagar is reflected. Maybe the titling also, they should also be very careful about the titling. They need a little bit of more research work. Then coming to the sub-theme of the last paper of Rashi and Shishti, which was unveiling the evolutionary myth. It was really a very good paper, but then they forgot that there is another religion called the Jainism. If they had included that, then it would have been comprehensive. So now that they left off one major religion, till about 10th century, even in Karnataka, it was a very major religion. It was not that it was for a longer time, and it did not go away. Just like Buddhism, it is still surviving, and it is very strong in Gujarat area, Rajasthan, and Digambar Jains in Karnataka. When this is the percentage of the people of Jainas living in these areas, they completely ignored one particular religion which insisted on being vegetarianism. In fact, there is one place, I think it is Palitan or something, wherein they have brought a law wherein only vegetarianism is in force. There is nobody can sell or eat non-veg meat in those areas. So these are the points that were not touched upon, but otherwise, on the whole, it was very interesting.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do any of the students have to give a feedback? You're free to do so, just for a minute or so. Anyone would like to share their experience for today? The process of preparing for a research paper and presenting it at an undergraduate level. If you'd like to share, you're welcome.
May I?
Yeah. Yes, Srishti.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. First of all, to get us to do a research paper, we have, like, me and Rashi, we bonded over this, understanding how she's a vegetarian, I'm a non-vegetarian. So during our research, what I would like to share is there was a time where we both had a debate about what is veg and what is non-veg and why meat should not be eaten or why it should be eaten. So that's where we had our own ideas and concepts into our paper, and we are like, okay, this will be a little controversial, so we can skip this. So this is how we added something of our own, and we tried to avoid parts that would bring us